Okay, there we go. Definitely not Dark Souls 2. Yeah, I actually did Dark Souls. The one exception with co-op is I did do Dark Souls 2 co-op. I still haven't finished it yet. But like, I was playing some of it by myself. And Dark Souls 2 is such a hard-ass game. Because of the way it's designed. Not necessarily because like... It's difficult in a kind of a weird way. Like the mechanics are just different, which is what makes it harder, and like the movement and shit. And I really don't like the movement in that game. You yelled really loud in the garage. Damn. Well, yeah, I guess at that point you were like, fuck, is this even gonna be covered by the warranty? Oh shit, hold on, let me pause. No, I don't want to use that. Yeah, let me use this. Dark Souls 2 is the most content, but it's extremely clunky. Yeah, I just... It's... I don't think it's a bad game. Like, a lot of people really don't like it. I don't think it's a bad game. It's definitely, without playing DS3 or Demon Souls, I can say pretty confidently that I'm not gonna, that DS2 is probably my least favorite in the entire fucking series. Just because of how clunky the movement is and just the way the combat works. Oh, but now you have to postpone it again? Shit. Look at this guy thinking Dark Souls 2 is a good game, and yet you play Jack. Don't even get me started on Jak 2. Bro, at least, like, Dark Souls 2 is fun. Like I could play with co-op and it's a lot of fun. Jak 2 sucks. At least the beginning is good. The second half of the game is awful. I'm sorry, but it is. It's so... The lack of checkpoints is so baffling to me. Seems like a case of the... No, it's not a case of the get good. The game isn't harder than Dark Souls, but the game is more bullshit than Dark Souls. Because give me one good reason why you should, like... Oh, you like get to the end of the mission, you die, you have to restart the entire mission again. And these are like pretty long ass missions. Like, that's just dumb. It's just like you could add 10 checkpoints to the game and the game would be significantly better. Dark Souls 2 Skull of the First Sin was the best magic system. Souls. Yeah, I've actually heard that DS2 is pretty good when it comes to the magic system. So you don't necessarily want to do a warrior, you want to do a mage character. All I hear is the moaning of a man who spent 2 hours on an easy-ass mission. I don't think there's any mission that I spent 2 hours on in Jak 2. It's just the fact that there's like probably... I could probably think of 20 missions. I could probably list off 20 missions that were way more bullshit than they ever needed to be. Oh, I Pyromancer Sorcerer? Yeah, that's what one of my friends did. He told me that was one of the best builds in the game. Wait, no. Wait, so Dark Souls boss runs are okay, but Jak 2 no checkpoints isn't okay? No. I don't like having to run all the way back to the boss again. It's annoying. But even that, like, isn't nearly as annoying as in Jak 2, where you have to do the entire thing again. Because in Dark Souls, it's like, oh, it's tedious having to run back. But in Jak 2, it's like, not only is it tedious, but you have to deal with the same like hard first part of the mission over and over again, just to get back to the other hard part that you haven't beaten yet. which is what makes it frustrating. And like the fact that you could literally solve like a lot of the problems in the game pretty easily. Like just add some like lock-on feature or like strafing. Also, what am I doing? Am I supposed to get on this platform? What am I doing? I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. You can list off 3 games that are way more bullshit than they need to be, but everyone loves them because there's no checkpoints. Well, it's not... I'm assuming you, like, didn't mean to type it that way. Because I don't think it's necessarily that people like those games because they have no checkpoints, but despite the fact that they have no checkpoints. Because, like, for example, GTA San Andreas is a great game, but it's a great game that's really unfair to the player. Because if you die, like, not only do you have to do the whole mission over again, you respawn at the hospital, have to walk, you lose all your weapons, you have to regain all your weapons, then walk back to the mission just to get another chance at doing the mission again. My guy, have you been onto the From Software Reddit? No, but I don't, but like give me the example. You know how many of the soft tarts? It is, should have done with it. Wait, what? What, Andreas? You know how many of the From soft tarts were losing their shit over the stakes of Marika? What? I think that's a good addition to the game. Adding more checkpoints so you don't have to run all the way back. Because, tell me, what does running all the way back, like, add to the game? Well, how does that make the game better? Is it to punish the player for... Because, like, when I play a game, when I play a really hard game, and I lose at something, I want to be able to retry that thing immediately. Because then I have that, like, adrenaline. I don't want to have to, like, waste that adrenaline and focus and shit running all the way back to the boss fight when I could have just immediately tried, like, my strategy. Like, imagine if you came up with a new strategy and you had to run all the way back to the boss fight to try it every single fucking time. That would get super annoying. San Andreas save. I think I'm dead. Yeah, whatever. Rockstar's building a grave for Red Dead Online. Yeah, I've heard Red Dead Online is like dying. It's to encourage the player to master the combat and mechanics. I mean, you're already doing that, though. You're already encouraging them by the fact that they're dying a lot. And they should be better, and they have to get better at the game. Better level design and through interconnected world design and unlocking shortcuts. Yeah. I mean, what I love about Dark Souls 1 is the fact that you unlock shortcuts, which makes going around the map so much quicker. Fuck. Double encouragement? No, fuck that. It's a net negative. It's literally a net negative, Leo. You're adding whatever you think it adds to the experience. It's like taking away something that's way more valuable. But I guess at the end of the day, Leo, I guess what it really comes down to is what do you value more out of a game? I guess maybe it is just a values question. And if that's the case, then you know, fine. But like, I would rather prefer that there's more checkpoints. Now, like, you could argue that there's a point where there's too many checkpoints. Like, yeah, sure. But I think it's a far cry to say that Jak 2 is at that happy medium where it has good-ass checkpoints and that they're, like, actually fair. No, I think it's way too far in the other direction. In Demons, you have Archstones, you die, and you have to restart the entire stage. Oh, shit. Bitch. Get in VC for a sec? Alright, bet. Are we doing the Jak 2 debate right fucking now? Because I was literally going to ask you when we're going to do that. Nah, I didn't come prepared, so... Also, nobody else joined. It's just going to be me and him. I'm in VIPs. Leo. Don't join, Andreas. Oh, for sure it's a value thing? Okay. At least we can agree on that. Fuck you. Fuck you. Oh, I forgot to turn on my what's it called? My mix it up.
Sorry, I had so many servers for a second, I lost yours.
Nah, yeah, what I do is I just make a folder for a bunch of inactive servers that I'm in.
Yeah, I also forgot to mute.
Did you finish your homework?
No, so you said something that made me just like...
Alright, because that's normally how it works. I say something that triggers you and then makes you want to come on.
No, it wasn't a triggers thing. It just reminded me of another conversation I had in another Discord I'm in. Just like games in general. We got into it. I kind of beat a dead horse on this because it infuriated me for a second. It was basically, we got into... you know, what it was kind of getting into the weeds of what makes a bad game.
Sure.
And like, I kind of listed off my criteria for. I'm taking a second, Yanni. Go. Sorry. My family heard me talking. But I was listing off like my criteria pretty much for what I look at for a game. Like. Just when you're trying to determine the actual quality of it from like an objective standpoint, like how the mechanics, you know, what everything on the inside of like how it works, you can judge that like, okay, this is objective stuff. But like things like enjoyment of a game, like just playing it and enjoying it, that's always going to come down to a subjective thing. Like, you know, just as we brought up with the values, what one person values in a game, another person won't, and you can have, like, that person will call, for example, they'll call, like, GTA San Andreas a bad game because it didn't check their boxes for what they enjoy in a game. And then, but another person will be like, oh no, this was great, but, you know, Dark Souls is terrible because it doesn't check my boxes.
Yeah, I don't really look at games and shit that way. So, the thing about media for me is I do kind of look at it in a very feels-based manner.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
in terms of, at the end of the day, how much I enjoy a game is gonna be how much enjoyment did I derive from partaking in that thing. So like,
yeah, absolutely.
Now, so like for example, like The Last Jedi, I enjoyed that movie. I think it's a dog shit movie, like factually, but like subjectively, the feeling I got from it was like I had fun. But like,
yeah,
I don't think somebody can factually argue me out of not enjoying it, if that makes any sense.
Oh, that absolutely makes sense. I mean, it's the SpiderMan 2 argument I get into all the time.
No, yeah, and like that's the thing is I think like somebody can concede, oh yeah, you know what? It's not a very well written movie. Oh yeah, you know what? The characters really don't have that kind of good acting. Like you can make stuff like that, but at the end of the day, it's probably not what they're never gonna be like, you know what? Maybe if they rewatch the movie and then they kind of realize, oh, maybe it's not as good as I remember it being, then yeah, then they can change their mind. But generally, no.
Yeah, and like, so what we, like, that kind of comes back to it, you know, with the conversation I got into it with the boys in the Discord was, you know, we kind of brought up, the way a lot of my buddies in this Discord look at things is very much like, all right, writing level, we gotta, you know, look at all of the writing, that we are judging it solely based on what got there, and like, I completely understand and get that. But something that's kind of changed with my view as I've gotten more and more into the weeds of production, just like purely because that's, you know, where my career, like where I want to go for my career, I've stopped kind of judging things based solely on what they like what is given to us, and more on the, okay, what were the parameters that the production crew, the writers had, you know, how much time do they have to like fully go through, revise everything, there's drafts of the scripts. Did they have anyone above them that was like, oh, well, you gotta include X, Y, and Z in this script, and we don't care how you do it, you just have to because this is the business thing that takes precedence over the story thing. I get into this, it really pissed me off, actually. I shouldn't say pissed me off, it just got me in the mood to get up and rant. Was one of my buddies is going at Final Fantasy VII Remake and talking about it like purely from a writing perspective, and I get that. The thing that I just had to bring up was like, all right, I get that, you know, not a lot of this stuff makes sense. Like the first thing that started was, you know, the guy with Barrett, the guy with the gun on, right?
In Final Fantasy VII?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay, well, so like just for basic, just like his right arm. Oh God, there it is. His right arm is a gun. Like there's literally a gun attached to it. There's no like way that there's no like feasible way for us to see how he reloads any bullets and how like it fires, how anything like. There's no way in the story or in the character model that shows us, oh, this is how he reloads to fire, or this is how he fires. And there's no real like in-game explanation for it that they cover. It's just that's the way it is because that was the gameplay mechanic that they were working. And so
okay.
What he was arguing was that this is really bad writing because they don't explain it at all, and they just like there's no logical explanation for it, and it drove me nuts because I was like, okay, look, I get what you're saying. On the contrary, gameplay, like I have to drive, like I hate that I have to drive this into people's skulls, but it's gameplay is king in games.
Yeah, absolutely.
Story is always secondary. I understand.
The one exception is like maybe Telltale games.
Yeah, that's what I always bring up is like Telltale games or like choose your own adventure games where the gameplay and the story, like the gameplay and the story go hand in hand because you're making dialogue choices that directly affect it, so they have to put more effort into it that way, and because that's just how integrally tied the gameplay and the story is. But in pretty much any other game, like even in games where there's, you know, branching dialogue paths, or like I talked to this one person and the decision I made here affects the story outcome later. Even those things that happen, like even those things, that's still secondary in the game because there's the mechanics underneath that you have to, like, the way you get from that story decision to the payoff to that story decision is the gameplay. And so if the gameplay is not, like, if it's not good or there's flaws with it, and like if the pacing of the missions is bad, then it doesn't matter how good your story is, the player's never going to reach it because they got upset or they got pissy at the game and were like, or just got bored with the game and were like, I'm going to go play something else. And that's the crux of the matter, is that like I get wanting to have the story follow, you know, the same set of rules of like, okay, from A to B to C, this is the chain of events. It makes sense. There's nothing like Deus Ex Machina that comes out of nowhere, or that's like, hey, how did you get this? Like, what is this happening right there, so that, you know, the next boss fight or the next mission can start. I totally get that. On another level, there's not always going to be a way that the writers can do that from just like the setup that we have, and then the mission structure of just like the mission structure of the game just doesn't allow for that. So like looking at Final Fantasy VII, there's so many like batshit crazy moves that you can pull off that in the gameplay that, you know, when it comes to the story, this also gets into the ludonarrative dissonance conversation all the time of, you know, gameplay, the narrative as told by the gameplay conflicts with the narrative as told by the story. Hi, mother. There's no lamb soup like it. It's cool. I'm gonna make some macaroni later. Can you close the door, please?
Continue.
Yeah, sorry. But yeah, so
Nah, you
the
good.
story, the story as told by the gameplay, conflicts with the narrative told by the cutscenes. So like, it's when you get those moments. Like normally, it's frustrating when you get those moments of like, oh, if you're playing Call of Duty, your character when you play, you get shot a bunch of times, but after like a minute, you regain all your health and you're back into perfect working condition. And then in the cutscene, your character gets shot once and you're down for the rest of the cutscene, so that the villains can get away and do something.
Okay.
And so it's that kind of disconnect that will, like, those are the moments that will really get the player like, oh, this happened, like this story beat had to happen this way, so that the rest of the game could continue. And that is something that you can absolutely judge with like, oh, all right, this is a problem because they could have set it up. They could have set it up differently, or at least in a way, like the writing of the cutscene could have been in a way that like, okay, this is a bigger explosion or whatever, and like the characters are way far away from each other, so there's no feasible way, even if like they got up and started running, that they could have caught up. And so, but then you have the other part of that of, you know, like say it's an explosion that sends you backwards far away from them, but you're really close to the explosion, and then it's the little like, do we choose between character getting shot once in a place where they could easily survive and come back, or character getting exploded so they get pushed back farther away, but then the player is sitting there going, that seems like a thing we shouldn't have been able to survive, because explosions in the game, in the gameplay, will
No,
kill.
yeah. I know,
So
yeah.
it's a really tough balancing act that you just like, you can't entirely judge of like, all right, this is bad, because it's just, you know, the gameplay takes precedence over the story, and so the writers can have to do like the best they can. So like, just going back to the Barrett explanation, there's no explanation for how his gun works at all in the games. You accept that it does work because that is the gameplay that was set. And like we got into it a little bit more with like, you know, uh, like in the Lego games, one of my buddies says, you know, the Lego games are really bad, or their narratives are bad, because when you die in a Lego game, your character disassembles in front of you and then you respawn right away.
Hmm.
Uh, and so what was kind of being said was, like, but because the characters can die in the cutscenes and not come back to life, there's no stakes in the narrative, because, you know, in the gameplay, you just come back to life, so there's no way you could lose. And I was like, well, yeah, there's no way you can lose in pretty much every game, because you're always being brought back to life
Yeah, but I
until
guess
you eventually.
no, yeah. I guess, but here's the thing: is that in the case of the Lego game, it's like people don't. I don't. People
Well, yeah, you
generally
don't.
don't play Lego games for that reason.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, is there's a difference. Like, there's a difference too in looking at the story of like, all right, this is a, like, people don't look at the Mario games and go, wow, that was an incredible story of Mario going to save the world, because, you know, it's not the focus of those games at all. The focus of those games are specifically like, this is Mario going around into different areas with a new mechanic that we created for this game to make it different
Yeah,
from the other
the
games.
focus is
And
the gameplay.
yeah, and that's why also, like, you'll get trailers that are, you'll get gameplay trailers, and you'll get narrative, and you'll get story trailers
Hmm.
uh, that will set up what the idea of the story is, and that's normally where you get a lot of the cutscene moments. Like, they'll show off all of the cutscenes pretty much in, or at least the majority of them in those story trailers, and then save the gameplay trailer for like all of the special things you can do. Uh and like, here, let me find the rest of the like list that I kind of brought up. um the list I brought up of like what to look at with the games. because like we got into a lot of different like weeds about what like a game like gameplay excusing certain moments or certain things. Like you can excuse how certain things work because this is the gameplay, this is what works.
Hmm.
But then like world building is a different issue, is a different thing entirely, where you can absolutely like judge, how a world was set up, of just like what's the history of it, because that's something that is kind of separate to the gameplay. Because like world building is kind of the excuse in games for like why things are possible. So the writers can do their best to justify things, but there won't always be an explanation. Like, and even when they do, some of those explanations can feel kind of cheap, where it's like, yes, Barrett's gun works by, it recycles his sweat or whatever into bullets to fire. And it's
Sure.
like, well, that's kind of a cheap thing, but that's the explanation they go with to explain why he never reloads. Or it's like, it comes from his soul or whatever. Like, it's his gun is powered by his soul. It's like, well, there you go. Like it comes off as cheap, but then it's the best that they can do considering how crazy the mechanic is. Because if they go even further into like oh well, it's a magic thing, then you have the buttheads like me who me, or at least what I used to be, coming in go, well, wait, why don't they just use this magic thing in this scenario? And then boom, problem solved, story doesn't happen. And I'm like,
No,
well,
yeah. You're always limited
like,
by something that you make as soon as you make it, because then you could apply it in some other area.
yeah, and so like it's the same thing with boss fights, where you go into a second phase and the boss pulls out some like new mechanic that can insta kill you. And so then, like, if you're looking at the game from a purely writing perspective, it's why does the main villain just do this and insta kill you in the cutscene?
No,
and
yeah.
It's like, yeah, I get that, but there's also a boss fight planned, so you kind of gotta suck it up for the boss fight, because that was the plan. And so there's only so much you can do. And then this was the list of criteria that I brought up of like things I look at, or at least things I hold to when I'm judging a game, like just on its complete setup. And it's like, so it depends. It shifts around because with different genres of games you have to judge it differently. Like you can't really with a fighting game story. We got into this recently about like injustice, the injustice as a concept of Superman going evil Nazi and killing everyone.
Yeah.
Like that as a concept doesn't entirely work with the like the characters in there. It's just the excuse that the developers need to create a fighting game between DC characters.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, yeah, and for like somebody that's super invested in the lore of like DC and shit, like that's why they make it.
Oh,
but
yeah.
for somebody like me who really just doesn't give a shit and doesn't really think about a lot of this stuff, like I don't really care like how fucking Barrett's gun works. Like like 9 times out of 10, I'm not even gonna notice that.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Like that's the kind of thing that you'll only notice when you really dive into the weeds and are like, I'm gonna look at every writing aspect of it, because like, and that's the reason he's looking at it too is because he's like, I played it and I was like, this is bad, and I'm gonna show everyone why it's bad. I'm like, you can try, buddy, but you are definitely gonna be in the minority on this
yeah,
one.
I was literally just about to say that. Like, I think most people don't care. They don't value certain like those little things that much.
Yeah, and like it's also a mix of, you get the nostalgia. Like I get the criticism of Final Fantasy VII Remake of like, all right, they took a 2-hour section of the original game and literally like stretched it out to be a 30-hour experience. And like I get that complaint of like, all right, they tried and there's not a lot of story stuff there, so they have to make up their own to kind of pad out the runtime.
No,
so
yeah, that's always the problem with remaking a game.
Well, it's the problem with remaking a game and doing it like vastly different than
Yeah,
the original.
yeah.
Like what I know about the original Final Fantasy VII, like I have no nostalgic tie to it at all.
Me neither. I never played it.
What I know about it is that it was originally on 2 discs. Like that's how big the game was.
Yeah, it was like Skyrim back in the day, basically.
Yeah,
like it was huge. It was the reason why PlayStation was considered a better console at the time than the N64.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so like for that game, and there's a lot of stuff like that game's narrative doesn't come off as like it doesn't come off with as many flaws because partially because of the limitations of the technology. They just couldn't pack as much story into the games, otherwise it wouldn't run. Like there's only so much you could do with the hardware that you have to you just have to make concessions because it's just not possible. And so like there's a couple times in the story of like, you know, when Aerith gets stabbed by Sephiroth and you're like, and everyone is treating sorry. Yeah, spoilers for a 21 or 20-year-old game or more actually. And so like you get those questions of like, oh wait, we have a material in game that we use that, you know, can revive people when they die. Why don't we use it on Aerith right now? I have the Phoenix down. Why don't I give it to her?
Have the Phoenix down.
But like because she was supposed to die in the story, that's just how it happened. And so like you can criticize it for the why didn't they consider this, and they actually do in the remake where they change it so that when your character runs out of health in combat, they don't die, they just faint. And so it's like they go down to their knees, you know, I'm recovering, and so the Phoenix down just kind of brings them back up. Right.
No,
and
yeah,
so
for sure.
It fixes that problem of like, oh well, she's dead. I have an item that can bring her back to life. And so it fixes that. But the criteria that I had, we're back to it. One is mechanics. You know, are they functioning? Do they work how the game tells me they will work without glitches or bugs? And are the controls responsive? Like that's
yeah,
like
that's actually probably the only thing I'd actually probably put above gameplay is controls and does the game run well, like the technical side.
So that kind of like that is the mechanics side just that I listed right there, just kind of covers gameplay as well, because that's, you know, the gameplay is mechanics. And then number 2 is performance. Does the game run consistently without pop-in or frame drops and phasing? Do the graphics hold up consistently?
Yeah.
And are there any bugs or glitches that don't allow the player to continue playing? And how prone is the game to crashing? Like, if I'm playing a game and it like crashes 3 times in the span of like an hour, I'm gonna be like, this is a little... this is going down.
Yeah, like the thing is, in my mind, they're both deal breakers if they're both really bad.
Yeah, and so like and that's why I also specified that like, are there any bugs or glitches that don't allow the player to continue playing? Because like if I just looked at it on a face of like, oh, are there bugs or glitches in there? Then I'd have the entire Skyrim community coming after me for saying it's a bad game. Because everyone loves Skyrim and says it's a great game despite all the bugs and glitches, because all the bugs and glitches are funny.
Well,
and so that's the concession.
No, yeah, but like
that.
I think it's totally valid to look at that and be like,
yeah,
like the net benefit of it, you know.
Yeah, and like no programmer is gonna look back at their bugs and be happy that they're there. Like even if they're funny, they're still gonna be like, oh, I want to fix this, but like it doesn't negatively impact the game. Like it doesn't crash it. And so like that kind of stuff, I look mostly at like, does the game crash, or is there anything that doesn't allow me to play? Like say like if there's a bug
like a lack
where
of
No, that's not a bug. That's a purposeful design choice.
Yeah, but,
if a checkpoint
either way, to
doesn't
me, it
work,
doesn't matter because at the end of the day, that makes the game worse in my eyes.
Sure, and so like but to that point, like if there's a checkpoint that is there that you know, like if the game gives you like if the game gives you like notification on it, like a little flagpole that pops up that's like, oh, okay, or like the checkpoint box doesn't crash.
Sure.
If the game gives you some like visual notifier that there's a checkpoint there, and then the checkpoint doesn't work, that's a like, all right, this is a flaw because that's a bug that it negatively actually impacts the gameplay. And then
because it's not working as intended.
Yeah, it's not working as intended.
Right.
And then I would, for some of this, I would look at Melee, and I'm like, that's like Melee is on the levels of creating the game and like what constitutes a well-made good game is technically bad because there's so many bugs and whatnot in there that don't work. The game doesn't work as intended, and so that would be a bad game. But there's the player perception of it because Melee is because of those bugs.
I guess you would look at it in the objective sense, like it's objectively, but like.
And that's like the criteria that I've listed here to try and like get that image.
Yeah, but it's kind of like, what is I guess the purpose in saying it's objectively a bad game, when to somebody that subjectively loves it because of the way that it's designed, which unintentionally made it in a way that they actually like better than the games than the other games that are intentionally designed to be a certain way.
Yeah, which is why I wouldn't really like for any game that someone like. It's the same thing with movies and TV. Like for anything that someone that like I think is objectively bad in quotes, because I still don't think there's a way for us to like at least. In movies, like for games, it's a bit different because there's mechanics that I can see that okay, this is supposed to work a specific way and it doesn't. So like on those levels of like just maintaining a structure, it's not good because it's gonna fall apart. But like looking at movies and TV and all of that, I can't really I don't entirely say that this is objectively bad because it's the same thing of. Like I can look at a story for a movie and be like, okay, yeah, this doesn't like completely make sense going through, but then everything else of the movie on the production level, or just everything else about the movie is firing on all cylinders. I'm not going to call that a bad movie because that's a disservice to everyone else that worked on the game, saying that just because the story wasn't up to snuff, the movie itself is bad. Is because that just doesn't make sense to me because it's a complete product that everyone had to make. If that like makes sense.
Sorry, restate that.
So, like I won't call a movie or TV show like bad if one aspect or some of it wasn't up to snuff, but then the rest of it was, because that like I'll only call a movie bad or a show bad if everything on like the production level is not up to snuff. Like the directing was like. You're
talking about in an objective sense,
like
or a subjective sense.
In an objective sense, I can't say like I don't think there's a way for a movie to be bad in an objective sense.
What about if it was like? What if it was like it had a 100% chance to cause seizures in 100% of the population? I know it's a weird example, but
yeah,
it's a weird hypothetical, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, in that hypothetical, absolutely. I mean, like I guess it's just a weird thing of like I don't feel comfortable calling a movie bad unless every aspect of it wasn't
every
up
aspect.
To par. Yeah, like cinematography, directing, acting, writing, music, sound design, all of those levels. Like it's something I've just gotten more. That's more my mindset as I get into the production side, because it's like I can see that this, like, it's why I get pissed off when people say a game's bad because the story isn't like easy example, Last of Us 2.
Right.
Yes, the story is bad, but the rest of the game is still firing on all cylinders. Like
What a yeah.
like the gameplay itself. Like if anything, I would say Last of Us 1 is worse than Last of Us 2 because the story is
Really?
yes, because the story is really good, but the gameplay does not make me want, like, the gameplay and everything else does not make me want to get, or actually not everything else, just mainly the gameplay does not make me want to get to that story. Like I don't want to endure the gameplay just to get to the story.
No matter
And
how
so,
good
like,
the story is.
yeah, no matter how good the story. Like, so my rule of thumb too for that, like, this is a general rule of thumb, is just if the gameplay, or if the game has me wanting to look up the cutscenes over on YouTube rather than playing the game, then I think you have something wrong with
Death
your game.
Stranding.
Oh, dude, absolutely. Like, I got into that a little bit with my buddy. Of like, I tried Death Stranding, did not like it. I get that the story was, like, interesting. I thought it was. Did not want to play the game to get to the story.
Yeah.
I was like, it's not worth it because I'm not having fun. I'm bored out of my mind. Like, there's just nothing. Like, I would rather be playing any other game.
And I think in the case of Death Stranding especially, there's like lots of ways you can kind of look at it. Whereas you can be critical of it in the sense of like, well, what standard does this set for other game developers in making games? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
This person made a game where they didn't really have like much in the world or whatever. There's like a distinct, like there's like a lot of mechanics that we have in our game that this guy doesn't have, but this game sold like hotcakes. Well, what if we make our game like theirs?
Yeah.
And like, I can't really disagree with that.
Yeah, and like that's the kind of thing that that worries me, of like, oh god, we're gonna get a lot of like, for games that sell really well. Like, it's the same thing with like The Last of Us sold really well, and so now we're getting a lot of narratives, a lot of just narratives across the board of grizzled older character learning to be a human again thanks to naive or just fresh off the daisies young character. Like, that's like the narrative thing that's been coming around because The Last of Us 1 was so widely acclaimed for its story that we get that going through. And while we can still, like, it's still good, like, it's not a bad it's not a bad narrative thing to go for. It just, when everyone does it so much, it's like when every villain got a redemption arc after Zuko's redemption arc was so good in Avatar, you just get tired of seeing it because now everyone's trying to copy that, and it's not landing.
That actually leads to a discussion I really want your thoughts on, actually.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, let me finish up the rest of the list. But so, yeah, 3 assets. Do the character models hold up? Do the environment details hold up? And then 4, level design and missions. Is the level clear and concise? Is there a structure to it that dictates the flow of the gameplay clearly to the players so that they don't get lost? Is the pacing of the missions and levels good? Does anything drag? And so, like, pretty much any section of a game where you get to it and you're like, this is gonna take, like, and it feels like it takes forever, is like, that's like the bad pacing. And then narrative, this one changes the most depending on, like, the genre of game, because, like, you can have, like, a game like Cuphead, where the entire draw is the boss rush and the style of the game. Has pretty much next to nothing in story, of just you and Cuphead and Mugman lost their souls to the devil, and now they're trying to pay back their debt so they don't lose them, and that's the story for Cuphead. And so, like, you wouldn't really say that's a bad story because the setup and execution of it is sound, but it's not the in-depth narrative that something like Uncharted or God of War has. And so like the things that I guess look at it is, does the story follow a clear structure that has as little contrivance or plot holes as possible, and does the story help the missions flow naturally together, and then how much ludonarrative dissonance is in the game, because like you're
That's a
always
lot
gonna
to look out
have,
for. Sheesh.
there's a lot that you like. Games that are a lot harder to judge, in my opinion, than movies. Just
No,
because
yeah, there's so
simply
many
because of the
factors at
medium.
play, even with just the inclusion of gameplay.
Yeah, like so, like what kind of sparked that? What kind of sparked this list was one of my buddies saying that Overwatch is a bad game, and I was like, elaborate, explain. Like you gotta tell me why it's a bad game, and it basically boiled down to they cared more about the toxicity and everyone holding hands than actual good gameplay. And so when I asked, I was like, what makes the gameplay bad? Like the controls, the map design, the bugs, like character viability, balancing. What about it? And his response was, your team needed everyone to do good to win, and if one person sucked, you were basically guaranteed to lose. And that's when that was when I was like, yeah, but that's the point of the game. It's a team shooter. Like the entire game was designed around your team doing better than the other team in order to win. Like that's the point. And like my response to that too was like, yes, so my teammates sucked, so game is bad. And that was pretty much the crux of that whole conversation was like, all right, well that doesn't make it bad because you had a bad teammate and you lost the game. That doesn't make the gameplay bad or the game itself bad. Um, and so then we got more into like, what criteria or what makes a game bad, and then we asked, like, I asked him later. I was like, all right, well what's your what's your list for what makes a game good or bad? And it was pretty much like he wants a challenge out of a game. And like that's the biggest thing. He wants a challenge out of a game, and so like that's why he doesn't see the Lego games as very good, because that you die and you come back to life instantly. There's not much challenge, and so while there's not much challenge in that sense, there's still a level of challenge that like you're still gonna have that going through of I gotta figure out how everything works to beat the level, and then like dying in the middle of a Lego game's not really a challenge, but it's more of a nuisance, so because it slows you down, and so it's still there affecting your progress, but it's not the same level of challenge as like Dark Souls is, where you die and you get sent back. But what was that other?
Okay, so a while ago, I got into an argument with a friend about like Dragon Ball, and like they were talking about how a lot of animes now are really generic because they copy elements from Dragon Ball, and so many of the elements from Dragon Ball just are in those shows or whatever. So it's like all generic now. I guess I wonder if that thing, it's really hard because like how do you distinguish like a clone from something that's simply within the same genre as something else, or it's like it's two things that are in the same genre, whatever.
So the way I see it, like it's going down, the way I see it is pretty much we're at a point where there's not really going to be many original ideas going around. Everything is going to be compared to something because we've been around for so long, and like history's been around, but story stuff is always going to repeat itself. And so
yeah, there's diminishing returns when it comes to inventing new ideas. Would you say that?
Yeah, Oh, absolutely. Like, you can, you can just, okay, actually, comics are a perfect example of this, especially Marvel and DC, where they're at a point where they tell almost they restart the characters with a new run, almost at, like, the exact same point as they started in the last run, because they don't know how to continue or they don't want to continue forward. They want to keep the character around as long as possible. So you have to kind of rehash things, otherwise you need to end it. So like,
That's a common problem that I imagine is that faces like a lot of these really long-term, decade-old shows and IPs.
oh yeah, absolutely. Like TV shows are the worst, are some of the worst offenders, because like the rule of thumb is kind of, when you hit season 6 of a show, you kind of hit that point where you're gonna have to start retreading old ground.
Like how do you like if you make a villain that's like, he's gonna destroy the entire world, how many times can you top that, and then how many times can you make it so where it's like you're not like doing the same thing over and over again,
Yeah, and so like the thing when it comes to those stakes, like you'll see it in the Marvel movies for sure right now. I mean, like,
what
it's one of the most common complaints about Phase 4 right now, is that it's always a world-ending event,
Right.
and that is kind of like, that is getting to the point where everyone's just like, this is, I don't like this. Like,
it feels a lot more like
it.
you're just sort of making it just for the sake of making it,
Yeah, and so,
which is true because it's about money or
yeah, and like you'll see at the end, like, when it comes down to it, like most of the best TV shows that are out there are ones that ended, like, they ended about around season 5 to, or actually pretty much anywhere from season 1 to season like 7, where it's once in a blue moon you'll get a show that ends at season 7 that's really good. But like, I mean, just look at how many concise seasons, concise shows are really good. Like Castlevania, the animated show Castlevania.
Yeah, isn't that one like really short, but it's really good?
Oh yeah, the first season is 4 episodes, and they are great 4 episodes.
Yeah.
And then it gets longer with each season. That it goes up, it goes up to 8 episodes. Then it goes up to 10 for season 3 and 4. And those seasons all deal with things that are, very condensed. It's also a mix of like overcomplicating your plot lines for the sake of keeping for the sake of keeping your audience invested. Because if, like, I think too many writers are afraid of losing, are afraid of the audience losing interest if they simplify things. There's like a lot of narratives are so effective because of how simple things are. Like, you take just take season 1 of Game of Thrones as an example. Just like the main thing that drives the plot of the first season is Ned Stark. The king comes to Ned Stark and is like, hey, I need you to come be Hand of the King for me because my old hand died and I don't trust the guys around me. And that is the main plot of season 1 of Game of Thrones, and it is fantastic because it is just Ned trying to unearth the suspicion and try to do it and figure out what's going on. And so that stuff keeps it simple. And then, like, take Avatar, where Avatar is literally Aang needs to find a teacher to then learn all of the how to bend all the elements, and that is literally it. To learn all the elements in under a year so that you can stop the Fire Nation from taking over the world. Gotcha. And that is the overarching plot. Extremely simple. And then you have these little bite-sized chunks in the episodes where you have the entire plot of one episode is a fortune teller who had like the entire town is wrapped up in what this fortune teller says because
Yeah.
her predictions just happen to come true.
Yeah.
And like the entire town is just wrapped around it, and that the plot just revolves around that for an episode. It is nothing serious. It's just a character episode.
Yeah, it's
and that's,
not. I wouldn't call it. I guess you could call it filler. It sounds almost like, I guess, demeaning to say, but it is like.
It sounds like filler, and so that's the one thing is that I think a lot of stories the priority has shifted for a lot of stories to be plot focused rather than character focused. And like, I mean, Marvel movies are the easiest example of this, where the plot in a Marvel movie is the thing that gets the most focus and set and time into it, where the characters are kind of secondary, so they don't really have to, like, a lot of the characters,
Which
you get the
is
complaint that
interesting.
a lot of the, oh yeah,
because you'd think with like a lot of the so is that even the case with like a lot of these like characters that don't get as much screen time because they're not part of the mainline series, like for example Moon Knight or like Shang-Chi or whatever?
So are you talking like are you talking comic or movie side?
Because
Because
I don't know. I guess the movie or slash show side. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, well, so it's a mix of, you can't really do that in a 2-hour time frame as well. Like comic book stories don't lend themselves to movies well at all, because a lot of comic storylines are like 3 to 5 issue arcs that tell a complete story going through, and you can't really, like, there's a lot of times, you know, they don't fully not all of them can fully take up, you know, a 2-hour runtime, so they have to balance things, because a lot of arcs will just like, there's a couple arcs where it's just centered around Spider-Man trying to stop whatever scheme Doc Ock has. There's not much, like, it's just, the stakes are just, let's see if Spider-Man will win out, and that's really it. And so movies have to dial things up a lot more. They have to make it more dramatic, because you don't have 3 or a whole season to tell this entire story. So like, there's the complaint that goes around across Spider-Man Twitter of like, the supporting cast in the MCU movies is terrible, because and they compare them to the supporting cast in like TV shows, and like the supporting cast in Spider-Man Homecoming is ass compared to the supporting cast in Spectacular Spider-Man. I'm like, well, yeah, no shit. This is a show that had 13 episodes a season to flesh out all of the characters involved, versus a movie that had only 2 hours to do what it needed to do.
Yeah.
So it chose to focus on the main character, you know, Peter, Spider-Man, and then and then what he's doing to figure out what the villain Vulture is doing. And so you're not gonna get everything you want, because it's just 2 hours you can't. Even in a sequel, like it's even harder on the MCU movies because they're connected, and they constantly have to deal with some of the events. Like, it's the problem of having so many big events at once.
Yeah, it really constricts the creative freedom you have.
Yeah,
because
like,
it all has to make sense.
Yeah, you have all of these big climactic final battles, but then that leaves the rest of us wondering, wait, what happened? Like, where were these guys? Where were these characters?
Yeah, like, why didn't these guys just get involved, and it would have been a done deal, it would have been over. You know?
Yeah, and like, so that's partially where the side of me that is watching, that is looking at things now more on the production side of things. I'm like, I can't really blame them for not getting these guys in there, because A, they have to pay the actors, B, they have to figure out a way to write them into the story, and like, C, you can't really have them be that integral because the budget won't allow to showcase their powers. So like, because the budget doesn't allow for it, we have to contrive a way to explain why they don't or why they lose in certain scenarios. Like,
Yeah.
it's the like the lazy option. This is a lot less excusable in like an animated TV show, where like you have a team of Avengers. You know, Hulk is super powerful, and so in every fight they come up in, they're like Hulk and Thor, super powerful. The easy way to make to do certain villains is to and in a story where you don't want to like cut any characters from the episode, you have to have them, some way for them to easily beat the Thor or Hulk and kick them out of the story, so that the rest of the fight will have stakes. But then that damages them, because if they're so powerful, why are they constantly getting their ass beat?
Yeah.
Like it's that back and forth, and so like that's why it's a lot safer to just cut certain characters, like just say, oh, they're over here for right now, they're doing their own thing, because then it gives them more, character agency themselves. Like they have their own life going on, that yes, they'll jump in whenever we need them, but this is a character thing going on with them, so we're gonna let, like, we can handle it, this is fine, this is what we do, we'll handle it, and if we need to, we'll call them in. And like and that's kind of the things you want to go for. Or in like movies where it's pretty much things happened so fast that there was literally no way for them to get anyone else in there. Like how like Avengers Infinity War does this really well, where they have like Tony, the only reason that Spider-Man goes to space is because he was in New York, he saw the ships, and he was like, well, I'm gonna go fight aliens that are invading. And then he ended up in a space, and he just ended up in the spaceship going to Titan. And that is the only reason why he was there and not anyone else. So by the time anyone else could have assembled, they were already gone. Like the aliens were already gone. And so there's no way for them to show up. And so like those kind of workarounds are a lot better. But it all just comes back to the fact that TV shows are way better for long running.
No, yeah, they are. They're absolutely better.
Like I mean, just look at the love Spectacular has and Avatar. Like those adaptations or original stories, they're done so well because they use the medium to its full extent. Like Moon Knight, like Daredevil. Just easy example is Daredevil. It tells the long-running story. It uses the TV format and the 10 episode, actually I think it's 11 episode structure it has to tell a full-on complete arc of story. So like the biggest problem with the Disney Plus Marvel shows right now is that they're not utilizing the TV format in ways that they should be. Like, and I can't entirely blame the writers. Dude, holy shit, what happened to the frame rate?
Oh, dude, I don't know if it was like this on the original. Like, if I was to play the PS2 version, it would lag this bad. But like, there's just so much shit on screen, it's making it lag.
I mean, that's fair, honestly. This game is bonkers.
No, yeah.
But yeah, going back to it's like the TV shows, they're limiting themselves to 6 episodes because a lot of this stuff was drafted and originally conceived as a movie, and so now they're just kind of they rather than going back to the drawing board, it's a lot easier for them to just make it a 6 episode thing. Like take the script, extend it at certain points to make it fit the 6 episode runtime they want to hit, so that they don't have to they don't have to spend any more money on like a TV budget than they have to do, which also is a scummy thing to kind of do. Like the amount of like actual, they could have made so much better stuff if they had approached it as an actual TV product than a movie that was turned into a TV show, like Kenobi. Kenobi was originally drafted. We already know this. It was originally drafted as a movie, and so when they went to the drawing board and decided that it was going to be a TV show, they didn't really change much. They just extended sequences. And so there's like a fan edit right now. There's a fan edit of Kenobi that condenses it down to a 2-hour movie that is so much better. Like it's really good. Go watch it. It's better than the show. But like,
wait, go watch what? Sorry.
Go watch the 2-hour edit of Kenobi, fan edit of Kenobi.
Are you fucking serious?
Yeah, it is so much better than the show.
Wait, is it literally just scenes from the show that they edited together to
like
make it better, or what?
Yeah, because the Kenobi was originally drafted as a movie, and they just extended it. And so all the fan really had to do was like go through and just edit it to be an actual movie, and it came out really good. And so, like Moon Knight and Miss Marvel are like the two kind of worst offenders right now of, or at least not the worst offenders, but the ones that have gotten it the worst because of the 6-episode thing. The 6-episode structure doesn't allow for like a proper street level story, because it wasn't really drafted to be a small story. It was supposed to be a big thing. With movies, people, it's a safer business strategy to it is a safer business strategy to have a big bombastic finale for a superhero, because that's what the general audience expects.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure.
Like, I as much as I and like all the other yeah, it does go from 0 to 100 way too fast. As much as like I and the rest of the people who read comic books would love for, or like prefer and want the MCU to reflect the comics, it's just not it's not possible when we are not their target demographic, really, at least for making money, because like movies are money making things at the end of the day, and we like the comic books don't make a lot of money to begin with. It's already a dying, like the comic book industry is not doing good. Like Marvel and DC are not like big tickets.
Mm-hmm.
They are the biggest money makers of comics, but manga makes so much more money than comics do.
Yeah, which I'm willing to bet has to do with the rise in popularity of anime and manga and the rest.
It's a mix, actually. It's a mix of the fact that the structure of manga in general, manga stories end. They have a very definitive ending. And it's a very clear very clear path from issue 1. Like from issue 1, unless specified in like the flashback in the show, in the manga itself, you know for a fact that you are going from issue 1 to issue 50, and you don't need to know anything. Like you don't need to read any outside material to understand the story that happens. And so it's the opposite with a lot of Western comics, where like Marvel and DC especially, to understand, because it's such a connected universe, to understand what happens to understand why the Incredible Hulk is showing up in the X-Men, in the current X-Men comic, you would have to go back and read whatever comic they say happens. Like they'll say, oh, remember this from Hulk 206 in the paneling, but they won't tell you what event actually happened. They expect you to go read it for yourself.
Really? So that's like not as much the case with manga?
No. Yeah, manga is like manga, at least from what I understand and what I have read as well, it is a straight 1 to, like, even if it's a really long running manga, it is just a straight, this is what happens. You just read in chronological order and you can get everything you need to know about the story.
Okay, that's actually really interesting.
Yeah, you don't have to go out of your way to like, you don't have to go out of your way to look up any other story.
No. God damn.
You'll
Go ahead.
you'll get some people who will be like, oh, it's because comics are doing a lot of woke stuff right now and manga isn't. And I'm like, well, you're not raw or right about that entirely. Yes, comics are doing a lot of more political stuff than, or at least a lot more overtly political stuff than they used to. Like, I mean, like, all comics have been inherently political since they began. SpiderMan, like Stan Lee was never quiet about his stuff.
No, yeah.
Any of the comics. The difference that comes into it is that those politics were always kind of secondary to the story being told, or they complemented the story that was being told. So it's like, I mean, like in a character called Captain America, no shit, you're gonna be in politics. It's literally like tied to the country.
Yeah.
No shit. It's just, you know, when you're reading it, audiences don't like, regardless of what the message is, audiences don't like to be pandered to. Like, they don't want to feel like the story is talking to them.
They don't want to feel like they're being preached to.
Yeah, that too. So, like,
no, yeah.
Because if everyone loved being preached to, Jehovah's Witnesses would, like, skyrocket. Their numbers would go way up. Like, and so, like, it's a mix of that going through that. You know, manga is a lot more interested in, at least the outward presentation is that they're a lot more interested in telling the story from A to B with no, like, side points. And then it also, like, it makes things a lot easier on the reader because they don't have to follow what happened. They don't have to read 600 different issues of the comic to understand what's happening in the newest Spider-Man.
That's so interesting, because that's one of the big reasons why I don't really want to get into, like, what's it called? Like Dragon Ball, or even, like, I want to get into Naruto, but that's definitely, like, something that kind of holds me back.
Oh, yeah.
Is the fact that I have to engage in so much stuff from the beginning to seemingly understand to understand what's going on, to be able to engage in people's conversations about the show.
Well, and so, like, the only thing I know, like, anime in general is a lot easier with it. Like, anime and just shows in general are easier with this, where, like, Naruto and Dragon Ball, from what I understand, all you have to do to understand, like, Naruto is just, like, watch Naruto from the beginning. Like, just pop on episode 1 and just watch. And
right, but that in of itself is a lot.
Oh, absolutely, because it's like
it's a long ass show.
Yeah, there's like 400 episodes, and like,
I think I'm pretty sure it might even be more than that.
Well, I'm not
actually,
sure.
No, that might sound about right, actually.
All I know is that, like, I know there's like Naruto Shippuden, which is like one version, like
there's the original, then there's Shippuden, and there's Boruto.
That's right. Yeah. So, like, if you just want to, as far as I understand, if you want to understand Naruto, you go back and you watch the original, then Shippuden, and then go on. Like, Dragon Ball, like, I think has some different stuff, but just Cowboy Bebop and Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood are, like, widely regarded as two of the best anime and in Fullmetal Alchemist are the manga of all time, because it literally just, this is the story, we're gonna tell you everything you need to know about the story in the show, and that's it, we're done. Like, when we're done, we're done. And even Fullmetal Alchemist has had like a couple like supplemental stuff that comes out. It's always been, this is optional. You do not need to watch this to understand the story. Like, even with the Cowboy Bebop movie, you don't need to watch the Bebop.
Wait, there was a movie?
Oh, dude, it's fantastic.
Fantastic. You know what? I think we have talked about this.
Yeah. The movie itself takes place, like, in between episodes, like, 18, I think. It's closer to the end of the show. but you don't need to watch the movie to understand or to get the full story out of Bebop. Like, and that's the way I see it being. The way I would prefer it to be done. That unfortunately the Marvel movies don't do is supplemental material for anything. Supplemental material needs to be something that only enhances the show or only enhances the main product that it's attached to, and it shouldn't be necessary. Like Clone Wars, for example. Clone Wars enhances the prequel trilogy and makes a lot of things about those movies a lot better, but you don't need to watch Clone Wars to understand what's happening in Revenge of the Sith. Like,
yeah, for sure.
That is the big thing, and that is something that the Marvel movies are kind of ignoring. Is that whenever just look at the watching order. Like, there's nothing like for the movies to understand the movies. I'm absolutely fine with like previous movies being kind of like, oh, this is what you should watch beforehand to get the story. I totally am behind that because yeah, that's a movie. It's part of the mainline thing. It's not as egregious as like, oh, to understand this movie that comes out, you need to watch because it continues the story of the show.
What the fuck?
Watch like 6 different things.
Oh my!
I just saw that.
Dude, I got beamed. I gotta do the whole 8 rounds over again. This is so stupid. It's such a dumb mission.
But yeah, so like having supplemental material is cool. Don't make it necessary for your movies or your shows. Like what I'm hoping to God right now, SpiderMan freshman year is hopefully we get a reveal of that. But it's supposed to be the origin story for MCU Spider-Man, Tom Holland. It's supposed to be the origin, and so it takes place, 6 months in between that time frame of 6 months when Tony finds him. We see him in Civil War, where he says, "I've had these powers for 6 months." It's that time frame between them, and so what I'm hoping is that they don't introduce a character there that becomes super integral to the plot of any of the movies. Like if they introduce Tombstone in freshman year, and then later in the movies they bring him back, later in the movies they bring him back, and like he's the main villain, and he starts talking about things that happen in the movie, or he starts talking about events that we didn't see happen in the movie but happened in the show, and those events and his motivations are integrally tied to what happened in the show. That's a bad thing for me, because then it makes it less. I saw that. It makes it less. It makes it less like I'm watching a show because I want to watch it, and it makes it more I'm watching this because it's homework. And that will always bring down the enjoyment for anyone. Where it's like I'm not watching this because I want to. I'm watching it because I have to if I want to watch the next product.
Yeah, that's kind of in a predicament I'm in right now, where I feel like there's so many shows that I want to watch, but like a big reason why I want to watch them is because I want to be able to engage in the conversation, and yeah. I have to sit through. It almost feels like a chore in a way, even if it's like a show that I'll like, because I have to. Yeah. Because just the prospect of having to go through all these shows.
This is why you haven't watched Spectacular yet.
Dude, this is why I haven't watched so many fucking shows. I haven't even seen The Boys yet. Everybody's talking about The Boys.
The Boys is fun. I haven't actually caught up with The Boys yet. I watched it's in season 1, and then I never finished it.
I haven't even started it.
Hey, fuck The Boys. Watch Spectacular. It's better.
fucking god, dude. Everybody's saying that about the respective show that I plan on watching, and I'm just like, well, shit,
Yeah,
what am I supposed to do?
Dude, it's me. You know I'm gonna steer you the right way.
Yeah, I don't know about that. You already led me astray with Jack too.
Oh, shut up! Don't be a baby.
I like how
But-
we went off the rails.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it comes back. Like, it just comes back around. Like,
When will that be?
I don't know. But I say, watch Spectacular because it's great, and it's only 2 seasons, so you don't need to watch it to understand anything else. It's just 2 good seasons of television.
No, yeah, which I'm actually kind of glad about, because I just don't have the stamina to watch
Oh, for sure.
long shows anymore. I just can't.
Yeah, like the good thing about it is that it's 2 13 or 14 episode seasons that are like 27 minutes each. Like,
Okay.
th-
That's
those are
actually a
27
weird
minutes.
amount of time.
Well, okay, I say that they're like 20 to 30 minutes. Like, it's whatever the standard for the television was at the time.
20. I would imagine it's 22. 22
Yeah, it
minutes,
might
8
be
minutes
20.
of ads.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. I'm pretty sure they're like 22 minutes, which is great because I could just sit there and watch them all. And I could watch a whole season in a day, and I'm like, I enjoyed this entire season. It was worth it.
Yeah.
And like that's the good thing. Like another show that has only 2 seasons, that's really good. I say it's better than the MCU is Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes. It's actually like it was the show that was out. It came out before Avengers, like the movie. It came out when the MCU was starting, so there's like Tony's character design, like his face has some resemblance to Robert Downey Jr., or at least a bit more, but like characters like Thor and Captain America had barely been introduced to the public at that point. And then like the rest of the roster, which is Ant-Man, Wasp, Black Panther, Hawkeye, Hulk, and then Captain Marvel later. Who, dude, Carol is awesome. Like Carol Danvers is awesome in Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and it makes me so mad that she sucks in the MCU.
Really?
Oh, she's awesome in Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Like her and all the characters in there are really fun because they're actually a lot more faithful to the comics. The Thor, you'll be kind of for a trip if you want whenever you get to it when you see Thor and Hulk, because they are vastly different from the movies, because comic Hulk has an actual personality and talks. Like he has actual intelligence and motivations of himself for his own. And then Thor isn't really jokey like he is nowadays. He's a lot more serious and Iberian. And like he has his funny moments for sure, but a lot of it it's all character-based stuff, where it's comes from it's a type of humor that only he would have because of who he is, and it's great. But all right, I gotta get back to
Oh, motherfucker! I didn't get to finish what I was gonna say.
Oh shit! Oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. I'll listen.
All right, but it was gonna start a whole conversation because like, I honestly don't know how we came to this after I asked you a question about clones or whatever, about what makes what's the difference between like a clone and something that's within the same genre or whatever.
Oh, okay. I don't even think I answered it entirely, but the difference mainly comes down to like you'll never get a direct clone of anything, really. Like you'll be able to be like, oh, this is very similar, but
I think we could I think there's some games that are like. I'm sure I could think of like some knockoff like Pac-Man clone.
Sure, but that's a difference between. Then you get into the weeds of, like, is a Pac-Man or like is every first-person shooter that has the exact same mechanics a clone of the previous game because their presentation it could be different.
Well, are we talking about this something that's part of the same exact franchise?
No. So like
okay,
say
then, that's hard
like,
to say.
Yeah, that's why I don't think we'll ever get like a full-on clone of anything because there'll be something to differentiate. Yeah, there's like you could say that it's an imitation, which would be more like apropos, I think. Like this is a imitation or a knockoff of X game. Because the only difference in it is the visuals, like the present, like what kind of style it is. Like, say there's a game that has the exact same mechanics as Jak and Daxter that comes out, and but the environment, the story, the character design, and like the like overall texture of it is different. That wouldn't really be a clone as it would be a knockoff or imitation. Or it could be just an homage because they're like you get like you get simple games that just come through of like this is what it is. This is the game mechanics they're doing. It's a arcade side scroll. And it plays pretty much identically to Metal Slug, but it has a different texture to it, so it's technically not Metal Slug. Different characters, different environments, different world. Because like in those cases, it also comes down to like business stuff too. Like, well, this product is the exact same as this product. Like the Xbox and PlayStation functionally do the exact same thing, but they have different internal stuff to make it different so that they can, sell it.
Right. I was gonna say, if something, because it's kind of part of the clone discussion, if something like takes a lot of inspiration from something else, but that's because that thing has like, I guess, superior elements, like, should we really fault that person for taking the elements from that?
Absolutely.
It's like, well, would you rather have the copied elements that are better, or would you rather have something that's technically worse off but theoretically more original?
Oh, I would absolutely take something that has an homage. Like Fallen Order is a game that like literally takes from like all sides of the gaming spectrum. Sekiro style combat. It takes the world design, like world design from Dark Souls. It takes Metroidvania. It takes exploration from Metroidvania games, and then it has like a level skill tree. Like there's barely a single original gameplay idea in Fallen Order, but all of that stuff is brought together to make a package that has its own identity and
the whole package has its own identity.
And like so like if there was just a game that came out of like this is a different character that like say it's a SpiderMan, where it basically your character functionally he is swinging around through the city using a physics engine to traverse a city, but the way like the explanation for his powers and the visualization of it is like he's using grappling hooks to swing across the city. That functionally it's the same mechanics. Aesthetically it's different. Like it's just it's a weird balancing act that you'll get to. You just gotta like let's see how they do it. Cause like I mean Spectacular Spider-Man is to show that it doesn't change things up really from the comics. Yeah. All it does is it's pretty much every idea that was from the Amazing Spider-Man comics to the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, and like everything that had come out up to about 2007. It takes all of those ideas and then it just puts them into one package that like was there from the start. So those ideas were all there from the beginning, and they could craft the story with all of that stuff in mind. And so they basically perfected Spider-Man as like as in adaptation. Like they made what I would say is the definitive version of Spider-Man going through. Like pretty much all of his characters, or all of his supporting characters and villains, save for, I guess, like for some design choices. Like Craven's design starts really, really good, but then it takes a turn that I'm like personally I don't vibe with. But there's nothing like about his character that is not Craven. And that's the cool, like, that's why I love that one, whereas someone else may not like it because it doesn't do anything. It wouldn't hit that it's breaking new ground for the character, when really there doesn't really need to be much new ground broken for the character. It just needs to be he just needs to be put together in a satisfying way.
Yeah.
Like that, and so that's the big thing. But anything else before I bounce?
Oh yeah, when do you want to do the Jack 2 debate?
Never, because you're wrong. There's no
Never? I
wrong.
disagree
There's no
with you
debate.
on that.
There's no debate.
No, there's absolutely a debate.
But alright, man. I'll see ya.
Alright, later.
I will be lurking. I'm gonna go grab you.
Okay.
Like.
Based debates.